Hey, everybody, welcome to today's episode of the What Worked For You show. Today, we're going to be talking about real estate, but we're going to talk about two subjects that I really like that aren't so much about real estate, and real estate's just a vehicle. We're going to talk about creative financing and how to put deals together by thinking out of the box. But even more important, we're going to talk about something that doesn't get discussed much in the world of real estate and oftentimes in business, and that is risk management. And when we get risk management wrong, our ideas blow up like an atomic bomb. It is not a pretty sight, yet it happens all day, every day, again and again, because we see what's beautiful about being an entrepreneur, but we don't properly assess risk. So we're going to dive into that and what that journey has looked like for our guest today. So Caleb, Christopher, how are you?
I'm feeling wonderful today. How about you?
Wonderful. Well, thanks for being on. Let's dive in. And I want to start by asking you about your company. It's called Creative TC, and you have multiple factions in there I
Yeah.
saw. And it's like a go-to consultancy for creative finance transactions. What makes your approach stand apart from all the other people doing or talking at least about creative financing in the world?
That's a good question because I learned creative finance from somebody who teaches you how to just get into deals, which is great. But then when I got into deals, I was like, wait a minute, who makes this thing safe, legal, and ethical? Yes, we got somebody to sign a contract, and now we've got a sub two purchase of their house, which is where they leave their loan in place. And I'm like, yeah, but who's here to guide us on not doing things wrong? Like, yeah, you can just do stuff, but how do you avoid the pitfalls? And that really wasn't there for me. And so I just dove in to learn more about how to do things right. And I want things to be safe, legal, and ethical. And I wanted to be the lighthouse or beacon of safety that wasn't there for me.
So, what was that moment that made you say what you just said? Wait a minute.
That was when so we had two contracts signed with sellers. My job, I joined a real estate wholesaling team as the creative closer because I understood the concepts. I understood all the techniques and how to structure deals, but I hadn't actually done any yet. And so I signed on to a wholesale team, got a couple of deals under contract, talked to the sellers, didn't make any lies or anything like that to trick them into anything, right? So I'm already ethical on the front end as far as it depends on me. But then we get to title and escrows process, open title with a title company, and I'm expecting some guidance from them, this being my first time doing a creative deal. Nope, they're just there to close it. So you have a contract and they'll do the deed and they'll manage funds here and there, but they don't tell you how to do it the right way. They don't tell you how to not do it the wrong way. They just close a transaction. And I'm like, wait a minute. It's really easy for somebody to pull a dirtbag move and deceive the seller or take advantage of them, even still during the escrow process. And the title company can't or won't say anything about it because technically that's not their job, nor do they want the liability for it. And I'm like, that's not how things should be. There should be a guide, an ethical guide in place here.
So, in like different states, some states are closing attorney states, some are title company states.
Sure.
I know, like, and I'm in a closing attorney state. In our state, if the closing attorney sees something out of whack, they won't do it because of the concern of it falling back to them. But
Sure.
what I just heard was the title companies will pass that buck along. So I just thought that's an interesting distinction right there. Or
I would
these,
say, if I can, I would say that a lot of closing attorneys, now they may refuse to close the transaction individually because they don't like what's going on, but
that's
technically you can be
true.
in a legally binding contract that is disadvantageous or one-sided, and their job is literally to close it. And they can actually, from my what I've understood and studied, they can actually get in trouble for taking sides as a closing attorney. Now, if you have an attorney representing you, that's different than going to a closing attorney who's supposed to be a neutral third party to transact for you. And so that person is supposed to remain neutral, speak facts, and not take sides. So they may recuse themselves or some equivalent of that, where they're like, I'm not willing to touch this transaction because I don't like what you're doing and you're doing. But they can't say all of that. They just say, I can't close this.
Yes, yes. Well, and that is something I've seen as well,
Right.
where companies will just say they won't do it. But it's the idea that a title company would just say, well, we'll close it, but yeah, it's all to it's very interesting. Very interesting. Because obviously, yeah, that would be a little bit nerve wracking. And but if you don't even know that,
Yeah,
right, yeah,
if I
that's
have one
risky.
skill, if somebody asks me, give me your one top skill, it's asking good questions. And well, I ask a lot of questions that other people don't have answers for. And I'm like, you're in the business of doing this stuff. You should know the answer to that.
Yeah.
That worries me, you know?
No, that's a very real thing. If you've been in real estate for a while, you know that's a real thing. And
Yeah.
questions lead to answers, and sometimes not the ones that we're looking for.
Sometimes
Speaking
the
of,
answer is this person's not qualified to be handling this.
well, no doubt about that. No doubt about that. But everyone starts somewhere, and
Yep.
sometimes we get thrown into pools a little deeper than maybe we should be. Or like you were saying, you didn't have the guidance, and I think as anyone that's been in business for a while has lived that scenario where you're like, what's going on, right? And we're like, what do we do with this? So that is a challenge. Let me ask you, because you came from a cybersecurity and risk management background. How does the perspective you gained from being in that industry, how did that shape how you looked at coming into the world of real estate?
I poke holes in stuff. I just try to poke holes. In fact, I'm not saying AI replaces people, but it sure does help me be a powerhouse. It's an amplifier. It can amplify smart, it can amplify stupid. But what I do is I'll take a scenario and put it in and say, these are the two roles in the transaction. These are their concerns. I type a lot. I type long into the AI tools. And I'm like, give me the perspective from an outsider. How would you attack this if you were party A, if you were party B? Looking at the contract, how can you take advantage of the other person? How can we make sure this is safe, legal, and ethical? And so I ask those sorts of questions. And I do some brainstorming on my own, but how would I attack this? What risks are posed? Like if they do A, B, and C, do I have any recourse? Does my client have the ability to hold them off? And then not only do you have legal recourse, but I've been to court and I've won, but I still lost, if you know what I mean. If you've ever been to court and even if you technically win, it does not necessarily put money back in your pocket. So
Right.
even if we're technically right, is it even worth it in the long run to bother pursuing this thing? And so I help people understand a lot about that, technically being protected versus actually being protected and what the reality looks like in real life if you actually try to pursue something.
Yes, and if there's one thing we've learned about attorneys is that rarely will they tell you what's really going to be involved and how much that'll cost. And
Well, and
they, and
to their credit,
let's
they really can't tell you exactly what's going to be involved, and so in to avoid saying anything wrong, they try to not say anything at all a lot of times.
correct. Unfortunately, what happens though is they'll take cases, and I'm not picking on attorneys because we all have plenty of attorneys on speed dial, but the reality is we've seen where some will take a case where they know there's a good chance that client's going to spend 40, 50 grand on a case worth 50 or 100.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, the pain, and it's so many cases that are not worth the time when it's it is way cheaper to get two people in a room and shout at each other. It's way cheaper.
Or to just walk away from the loss a lot of times. Like after my court case where I won, it was against a seller who reneged on a contract, and uh, but we spent $15,000 in legal fees. And by the time it's all done, yeah, the person owes me $45,000 now, but I'm not going to get paid.
Yeah, it's a challenge. There are some challenges there. So that is a whole nother
But
thing.
that is part of what comes into that's why I started my company because people hadn't seen that stuff for themselves and they're
Yes,
so stuck on what's right that they're not looking at what's practical. And I
so
mean
true.
practical for them because for me the threshold is pretty much 40 or $50,000. If it's not worth if I'm not going to actually recover it. So number one, it has to be at this threshold and there has to be a likelihood of recovery because you're not going to squeeze blood out of a turnip. And so when I'm helping people with real estate contracts and I'm like, look, paperwork is just to keep honest people honest. You can say whatever you want, but if they renege, deals and paperwork don't default, people default. And so if the person defaults on you, Are you willing to spend the money, or do you just want to establish the precedent, understanding, you know what, I'm probably not going to be able to pursue this if it goes wrong, even though technically I would be in the right. It's not worth it. So am I still willing to go into this deal with that as a risk? Yes or no? And when you ask that question honestly, and if the answer is yes, rock and roll, dude, do the deal.
Right. That's I love that because that's real risk assessment. That's the stuff we never learned in the seminars, as I like
Yeah.
to say. They
Yep.
just don't talk about it because that's not sexy, it's not fun, it's not a beach picture, but that's real world. That's really what happens. And unfortunately, a lot of people get, and not just real estate, but a lot of people get in business, they go through that tough scenario, the litigation, the bickering, and I call it adult babysitting at the end of the day. And they walk away. They walk away from their dream. They walk away from their aspirations. They're not just walking away from real estate or being a business owner. They're walking away from what drove them before. And now they settle in life. My question to you is, did you have moments where you're just like, oh, is this worth it? Should I just walk away from this
Oh,
business and go back to doing, like, forget real estate? Oh, go back to cybersecurity. It was quieter. Did you ever
yeah.
have a thought like that?
Yeah, honestly, for the last couple of years, I could have made more as a cybersecurity consultant, not or even just an employee at a cybersecurity company. I could have made more doing that than I'm doing right now. In fact, over the last 6 months, since I'm starting another company, the cash flow is low again while we start another one. But I'm addicted to this entrepreneurial game. But yeah, I think of it often like I could have made hundreds of thousands of dollars more as an employee at a cybersecurity company than I could have doing this. This is fulfilling though. I enjoy it, and I'm going to hit my moonshot pretty soon.
No, that's awesome. Well, and that's a key distinction is there's fulfillment. And when I hear the word fulfillment, obviously it's a very positive word. It makes us feel good, and we're like, ah, yes. But I think back to like when I would go to like many, many years ago, I went to a Tony Robbins thing, and he talked about fulfillment being like one of the key human needs because that's the one that ultimately really moves the needle. And so that's a key thing is if it's fulfilling, we just got to keep pushing. But for some people, if they choose to be an entrepreneur, they find out that maybe it's not what was fulfilling. Maybe being an entrepreneur actually pointed them back to something else that was their actual fulfillment. And that's okay.
Yeah.
I love it. Love it. So you're somebody that you're always working on systems and processes. You could tell you got that technical background. What's a system you have found that's been the most practical for you with your real estate businesses to date as you've dived into this?
For me, it's having a recruiting pipeline that's active and ongoing. As a business owner, I have multiple employees. We're at like 14, I think, right now, but I have been recruiting out of South Africa and not through intermediary agencies. We are directly on LinkedIn and Indeed and another platform or two, and we're paying for advertisements, and that is just a steady budget. I want a constant influx of applicants. I'm not playing games with people. I'll pick a star and take them. But here's the thing, in that pipeline, we have a few automated tests. Attention to detail is critical for what we do anyway. And so that's a big excuse for me to let people, hey, here's the specific instructions you need to follow. And then there's another one when you read the job description, like we told you in the email. If you're not watching for a specific instruction in the job description, you miss it. And we literally go from thousands of applicants every month to tens just automatically because they fail out on those tests. And if they can't pass those tests, I, as a business person, am not going to put those people in front of my customers.
I love that. And that's such a great tip for people listening to hire. Just, yeah, put something in the ad that says, do whatever, whatever it
Yeah,
is.
they
Just
need
a
to be able to.
simple little thing.
Yeah,
But that, if they don't do this, not only did they miss the detail, or maybe they saw it and were like, oh, well, that doesn't sound important. Well, then you
it
already have your
was.
answer.
It was important. See ya.
Yeah, no,
And the
that's,
system automatically emails them and lets them know, like, hey, we've decided to go with somebody else.
I
And I
love,
think that's also, we have to remember that there's people on all sides of every transaction, whether it's real estate or a job application or anything there. And so I want to make sure I treat people with respect and respond promptly. And so my systems are set up to respond promptly. We give them a certain amount of time to comply with the little terms and conditions that we've got in our process. And if they don't meet it by that deadline, it sends an automatic email, "Hey, thanks for your application. We've got lots of applicants. We've decided to go with somebody else." And I don't want to keep people waiting. That's rude.
Sure. I love it. I love it. And I love how you're incorporating the automation into that because I've seen that. Like a classic example being an administrative assistant. You put that job, I mean, your inbox just blows up
Oh yeah.
quickly. and you're like, there's like, no one's going to read 500,000 resumes for one job. Like nobody has that kind of time.
Yeah, and so if you're applying for a job, not that that's the typical listener here, but if you're applying for a job, or maybe you're your first time recruiting people, then the job of the recruiter receiving the applications, the first job is to reduce the pile to a manageable amount. And so for the applicant, you're looking to just not get kicked out. Okay. You just need to pass muster. You don't need to impress on stage one. So your cover letter, basic, make sure that you look the part. I don't care about your crazy hobbies, right? I'm looking for excuses to get people off the pile. That's literally what they're looking for in stage one. Stage two was when they actually read the resume, and that's where you need to impress.
No, that's so true. And as an entrepreneur, they'll save you a lot of time.
Yeah, it's like
A
number
lot.
one, keep your head down. Once you get past that, your job is to stand up tall and look impressive.
That's right. That is so true. So many people think of this idea of creative real estate as risky, like that, and just whether it's realtors, closing attorneys, homeowners. Interestingly enough, the sellers tend to be the ones that think of it as the least risky, in our experience. But some of them will also think of it as risky, and of course, there's different types of creative finance deals. So some are going to be deemed more risky than others, depending on who you ask.
I'll tell you some stories.
Oh, for sure. How do you how do you help the person who says it's risky understand that creative finance is actually a powerful tool that, when leveraged correctly, reduces risk?
I think this goes down to basic sales negotiation. And I don't want to just be like, you're wrong. Let me correct you. I want to say, you know what? That's a valid concern. Let's continue that line of thought and let me redirect it a little bit. Like, yeah, there are risks and you should be making an informed decision. And if my company does one thing, it helps people make informed decisions on all sides of the transaction. And by the way, if somebody was going to be one of my clients, we manage expectations up front, and those expectations are we are looking for safe, legal, and ethical deals. So we're going to help you at your first because you're our client, but we want everybody to make informed decisions. And if it looks like the seller doesn't understand, we're going to stop and help explain and ask some questions to make sure that they have an ongoing, active understanding of what this transaction actually is, because we don't want our name attached to a deal where somebody feels like they got tricked into something. So, yes, there are risks. Let's go through them and address them, and you can ask questions. And we've seen and touched so many of them. I've seen deals go into default. I can tell you what works to keep them out of default. I will always tell you deals don't default, people do. And so you need to understand that you're in a longer term relationship when you do a seller finance or a sub two or any of these arrangements that have an ongoing relationship. You need to assess the person, and that's the biggest way to de-risk the deal.
So what does that look like to you? Assessing the person, because, and I think back when I was early in the real estate days, I always give the example of I would talk to a very experienced investor and I would say, I would think I had a good deal, but they weren't interested. I'm like, how can you not see this is a good deal? Now you fast forward over a decade and you look back, and now I'm that person, right? Because now I really understand risk. But 15 years ago, maybe not so much, because I was just going off what I learned in the seminar, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, how do you help people with this idea of assess, not like, this is a real risk, this is a real challenge, this is something that you need to consider, because in particular younger investors, you know they say the blinders are on, but the blinders can be quite large. And I would even expand it to say it's not just the investors. Lenders are every bit as bad. I would say I've seen attorneys do some very questionable things that I know, I'm like, I know that's not in the rule book. I've seen home inspectors say crazy things. I once had an appraiser appraise a new construction house, and it was actually, I'm sorry, he was appraising a new construction, but he thought it was a remodel, and so he treated it. In fact, he used remodel verbiage. Like he missed the first line that said new construction contract. Like this was, and you're just, so you have people that, to your point you made earlier, they're simply not qualified to understand, much less assess risk. How do you how do you bridge that gap, especially when you know this person doesn't get it?
I, I don't want to sound like an advertisement, but I am the bridge to that gap. That's why I started this company. I don't know if that's what you were setting up, but there's not a single individual solution except to engage experts who have a reputation for checking facts and have a reputation for excellence in general. And even then, like you go to an attorney. Some I can tell you right now, somebody has an appointment right now with the worst attorney in the world, and I hope it's not you. Like how do you know?
It's true. I mean, it's
So
true.
you can only do so much validation. And I look at Amazon and they've got the reviews that boosts the confidence and safety of a transaction
Yeah,
tenfold. And Amazon offers free returns and all this other stuff. So they're protecting the consumer just to the
yeah,
max. And they're protecting their review system too. They're actively looking for fake reviews, paid reviews. So they're trying to preserve the purity of the review system.
right.
Google does the same thing, and they purge. I get 5-star reviews all the time. Google purges them. They're legit reviews, and Google's like, "This is too many. Nope, don't believe you." I'm like, "It was real, but
Thanks.
you lose
Wow.
a few of the good ones along with the in for the sake of preserving the purity of getting rid of the bad ones and stuff like that. So there's a little bit of collateral damage on my good reviews for that same reason. But I've never bought a review, none of that stuff,
Right,
and they're
right.
all literally 5 stars. So the reputation of engaging a professional who has a reputation, ideally someone you can get a personal reference to, that is how you de-risk and help make your own informed decisions.
Yeah. It goes back to the idea who you're surrounding yourself matters.
Yep. And
Absolutely.
the body of knowledge to be able to do what my team does, I'm really impressed with my team. I'm a nerd by trade and just by habit. So my knowledge goes like this just naturally. It's what I do. It's what I do for fun and entertainment. I read technical papers and laws. Sorry, that's weird, but I do it. So, but my team, they've got this much knowledge to work on any transaction that's this big over here, this big over here, this big over here. So the body of knowledge for a single transaction is only this much, but it pulls from random spots in this whole giant
Right.
framework of knowledge that they have to have. And so we have a progressive training program, and before they become independent consultants, they have to learn on a lot of deals and see a lot of stuff.
I love it. So speaking of your team, that you've grown it to the number of people you shared earlier, what's one of the achievements your team has done so far that makes you step back and go, we're making an impact? This is good.
The first time that happened was because I'm the expert, right? When I started my company, it was Caleb this, Caleb that in the 5-star reviews. And I'm like, my name needs to get out of these, right? I want my team. And they started rolling in eventually where, hey, Chelsea was fantastic with this. Susan did that, Dawood and TJ and El Marie, and Chris. And I'm not gonna name everybody on the team. Sorry guys if you're watching, but just boom, 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 boom. All these reviews coming in. My name hardly shows up anymore. And I'm so proud of that. And that was one of the moments where I'm like,
Mm,
I've done it, we've done it. I'm proud of you guys. I'm proud of us. We're making a difference in people's lives and in their transactions.
I love that. I love that. What a great feeling to know it's happening without your name having to be in the middle of it.
Yeah. And that's the fulfilling part, right? Because
Yeah.
I don't take the load lightly. As an entrepreneur, business owner, I don't take it lightly that other people's monthly bills are my problem. I have to make sure that the business runs well enough and that we're well enough known and that we do a good enough job and satisfy customers so that repeat business comes in and everybody can put food on the table every month.
Yeah, and that right there is a weight that very few, unfortunately, we live in a world that doesn't take that into account, right? It's like, oh, those business owners are just making, well, I mean, it is a burden to know you're the one responsible for putting food not just on your table, but all these people that are counting on you, and that can wear on you, especially when times are tough or the market's tough or the business is tough or whatever, who knows, right? Whatever is happening.
Yeah.
That's real world. Well, before you got into all of this, you had a fascinating career in the cybersecurity space, IT space. Looks like you were in the IT leadership as well. Um, what got you into cybersecurity? We're just stepping back here in time a little bit, like kind of following the progression. Like you mentioned you were a nerd. You said it, not me. I just want to be clear.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'll put glasses on right now if you want. I it's the IT was fine, but cybersecurity was the cool kid thing, right? It was the Corvette of IT. And you have to be in IT long enough to have that base knowledge before you really can go to cybersecurity. And so
Yep, true. Yep.
I liked it. There was higher career income potential. I think I like thinking in risk terms and trade-offs. And with cybersecurity, you really have to start thinking about you're never actually secure. It's not a destination; it's a journey, and it's a continuum. Like how secure are you versus yesterday versus next month, et cetera. The main thing is don't be the lowest hanging fruit. So you have to be at least above the basics, and that way you're not the lowest hanging fruit because most people who are attacked are a target of opportunity. So where's the continuum for this business? Where's that scale land for appropriate spend on risk management against different things? And then do you just insure the rest and accept the risk? That's it. It's a fun discussion. I enjoy those thought provoking conversations with business owners.
Love it. So how long did you do the cybersecurity thing?
2014 was IT, 2017 was cybersecurity, and 21 I switched out to real estate.
So you were
5 years.
you were going through cybersecurity, and so you're 4 years in cybersecurity, which truthfully in IT that's an eternity because things change so incredibly fast in that world. I did IT for 15 years, and I always tell people when I started, Windows 98 was coming out. We were playing Windows 95, right? And then when I left, I don't even remember what we were using when we left, whatever it was, right? It was 2011. So, but the industry was radically different
Oh
in
yeah.
that period. Uh, and nowadays, and it's only sped up. So in 4 years, now it truly is an eternity in that field. What was something that, when you were in that space, how did you manage rapid change?
I'm blessed that I like to learn. So staying on top of, I like to read the articles and study things. I would read technical books. I subscribe to technical newsletters. If I didn't enjoy that stuff, I have no idea how I would have kept up. I went to conferences. Also, if you've never thought of this, you can become an expert pretty well. It forces you. I like being forced. So I forced myself to do a lot of things by signing up to be a speaker at conferences.
Okay.
Hey, I'm going to teach on this topic. I darn right well better become an expert pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's important to be fun because I remember going to the tech conferences like Microsoft. It was called Tech Ed at the time. I don't know what it's called today. We went to VM World
Hmm.
and some of those things, and they were a blast. But sometimes you'd walk into a session and the speaker
Yeah.
super knowledgeable, but the excitement level of a blade of grass. And you're like, I can't take it. Like he's smart, but I'm gonna die if I'm here 5 more seconds.
Yep.
So it wasn't just the knowledge, it had to be relatable
Yep.
so that people would want to learn. And
That's
so,
actually one of my core values. Be
oh yeah,
relatable. When I did cybersecurity talks, and I'll do real estate talks too. I do RIA meetups and podcasts, obviously, but one of my favorite things was to put animated GIFs in my talks. And for the cybersecurity crowd, they were a lot more they were a lot less formal. So they expect informality and just easiness and frankness on the stage. And so the gifts really landed well. I always had a little review after every talk. One time I had a more serious talk and I got negative feedback because they said you're usually funnier than that.
Ah, that's a compliment. You're like, yes, yes, I can go back to being funny. That was better anyway.
Yeah.
But that speaks to the importance of being relatable.
Yeah.
People
Know your
really.
audience. And so in real estate, what if you're a wholesaler, buyer, seller, whoever, know who's on the other side of the transaction, what matters to them, what they're afraid of, what they need. And in creative finance transactions, here's something. If I'm going to buy your house and keep your loan in place, what are you doing after we sell? Are you moving? Are you buying another house? Are you moving into an apartment? How is that going to work? Because I want to make sure that this loan isn't going to cause you problems like we close and
Of
now you
course.
can't get another loan. That's a
Yep.
valid concern and we can address it ahead of time. So it is my ethical duty as a wholesaler slash investor buyer to make sure I understand what your plans are for the next 6 to 12 months.
Absolutely. That's a very good point. And I guarantee you, with 100% certainty, that if I call 100 people that are trying to wholesale a real estate creative deal, 95 of them will not know the answer to what you just said.
Nor
And
will they
that's
want to
that's
ask
scary.
it because it could blow up their deal.
Yes, and that is an unfortunate challenge that hurts the industry. But we'll come back to that. I want to ask you something about speed. The IT industry moves very quickly.
Mhm.
The real estate industry does not. So, what was it like adapting from, like we're going fast, fast, everything's fast paced to real estate where it's an act of God to get anything to move fast most of the time?
You know,
Sometimes it happens, but not often.
I did not encounter that problem because I worked in the investor space where people were seated their pants going as fast as they could trying to figure stuff out. And so putting something under contract, people would call me with an emergency because I was a technical expert. They would call me with something that had already festered and needed
Okay.
fixing ASAP. So I've always been in the fast paced thing. I've stayed up nights. I helped somebody get a deal from contract to a self performed closing where they just do a tabletop closing between each other and hand a cashier's check and a signed deed in 16 hours. They called me at 10 p.m. I stayed up all night, helped them get it ready. They went and signed it and recorded it. So
Nice,
we
nice.
still do a lot of fast stuff.
That's good. Yeah, because that's not common. So that's encouraging to hear. For most people, the complaint I've heard over the years, and we've certainly experienced, is why is this taking so long? It and people, and especially in an economy right now where there's a lot of uncertainty, and so there's a lot of people, although I think we're starting to see some more urgency coming into the market in recent months, but we're in multiple markets, and so we see a dynamic where there's just a lot of wait and see going on, and it's a
Yeah.
very interesting dynamic.
I think there's also a lack of urgency in title companies. Well, did I tell you that's what I'm starting next? Title company?
You did not mention it, but I remember I saw that you were
Yeah.
going to do that. Yeah.
So that's starting, I think, next week, depending upon a piece of licensing. But I see a lack of urgency there. And again, a focus on what we need to do as a title company is this. You need to feed us what we need so we can do our job. But I think there's a lack of accountability slash ownership over the whole transaction. Like, how can I help make sure this makes everybody maximally satisfied with the process? And it comes down to communication. Project management teaches us expectations management. You talk to people proactively. And I tell my team repeatedly, face to face communication is king. Voice and video are a distant second. And email and text should be used to follow up on something you already discussed in a better uh, method.
And that is how it should be. Wonderful. So, not in reverse, which tends to be what most people default to.
Yeah.
But let me ask you something about that. With the younger generation, they're growing up in a world where text is the default, then phone, and just getting the phone is an accomplishment. Oh, you want to go face to face? Oh, that's serious. It's literally the reverse. how do you prepare your business for something like that as you deal, because over time we'll deal with more people that are younger today, but that's all you think about kids today are growing up with AIs to default,
Yep.
right? Like that didn't exist 5 years ago, much less a generation ago.
That's a really good question. My youngest employee right now is 19. I'm 38, so I'm like, look, I'm literally double your age.
Yeah.
But he's mostly internal work. He's not so much customer facing. Most of my customer facing people are between 28 and 45. So I'm not having too much issue with that. But on the front end, when I recruit people, the job description and one of our interview questions is we work on Zoom all day. We're a 100% remote company. You're going to be on Zoom all day. You can get off to go do stuff, that's fine, but you're expected to be in Zoom with your camera on, not because we're watching you, but because if I wanted to come talk to Frank, now, have you ever used breakout rooms in Zoom?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have breakout rooms. You can go to any office you want. There's private offices and there's group open offices. And so Caleb will go into office number three. Frank, you can pop in, but you can see ahead of time that my video is on. So you can pop in and say, hey, I've got a quick question on 123 Main Street. Cool, done. Very easy to communicate with one another. So it's a matter of politeness because it's real awkward when you pop into a room and their camera's off and you're like, are they even there? And I'm like, hey, Frank, you there? And
Right,
it
right.
feels awkward to me. And so part of the culture was it's not that we're watching you, it's this is how you treat other people. You make yourself available to your fellow workers.
So your team is literally just sitting on Zoom. It's just running all day.
Yeah, if you go to
People are
Creative
just doing that.
TC, if you go to creativetc.io right now, there's a button in the top right on your computer to click to join meeting. You will join my virtual office, meet my receptionist, and she'll say, hey, did you have an appointment or would you like to talk with somebody? You can walk in for appointments at my company for a free 15 minutes because I care about being safe, legal, and ethical. And if you're doing a deal, even if I'm not going to get paid on it, I want to make sure that you're equipped to do things the right way.
That's pretty cool. Now that is using tech in a cool way. I like that. That's a
So,
great tip for all the listeners. If you're in, it doesn't have to be real estate. You got that receptionist.
yep. And so
I
she's
love
doing
it.
administrative assistant duties throughout the day, but her main duty is to be available for client walk-ins and appointments. And so every on the hour, on the half hour, we have 3 to 4 people show up for appointments, and they just pop into a little private office, have a chat, and they're done. And so that is how we establish face-to-face or voice and video communication with our clients on a regular basis. And I want you to pick up my facial expressions. I want you to pick up my tonality as I work on your deal because we're talking about some pretty important stuff, and I don't want
Yeah,
you misinterpreting things on a text message.
that is the truth right there. What a great tip. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. I
Thanks.
love it. That is a cool idea right there. So let me ask you, when you were early in your real estate career, well, first of all, let me back up. What made you decide, let's do this real estate thing? Like, were you bored with cybersecurity? It wasn't quite fast enough, or or is it? So, like, what was the thing that made you say, let's? Because and I've personally done the IT to real estate shift. It's a big shift. So I'm curious to hear what was your story there.
I first became an accidental landlord. And for those who don't know what that is, it's when you can't sell your house and you have to rent it out to make the payments. So I became an accidental landlord. No problem there. Such is life. I wanted real estate as part of my retirement portfolio anyway. So I guess we start now. That was in 2019. I'll give you two guesses which book I read.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Nailed it. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I
So
was
everyone
like,
reads it.
ah, I've been missing out this whole time. So thank God I have one house that's already a rental. Let me start focusing on that. So I went and found bigger pockets, started listening to all that, got the bug, started saving my cash to start doing real estate. And rather than save for retirement, I thought, you know what? I'm going to buy assets that cash flow and let other people pay them down. And that's going to be my retirement fund.
So what was the moment that made you say, I can now walk away from IT?
Well, combination of two things. Number one, the job I had at the time was drying up on contracts. And so I thought it was going to go away anyways. And number two was I had already established Creative TC and we were ramping up to where I had a couple of employees, contractors at the time, that I'm like, I can live off this money. So I'm comfortable making the switch.
So you took the approach of, let's get a side hustle going
Oh, yeah.
which grew. It was a proof of concept. It worked before you cut the cord on the past. So was there a point anywhere where you're like, let's, because that's a key thing, right? There's a lot of people that are like, I'm just going to cut the cord and dive in. And then some people are like, ease their way in. Like, how did you, so you read the book. Did you think at any point, well, I'll just leave? Or was it always, I'm just going to ease my way in?
I want to separate the concept of switching to real estate from starting a business. Switching to real estate in a lot of people's heads is going to be like, I'm just going to switch and buy rentals and turn that into my cash flow machine, and I'm going to do wholesaling. Wholesaling can be the starting of a business as well.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
I didn't want to make that switch too quickly. There was a pressure though to get my side hustle up and running. There was a pressure to do that because this was going the full time job was going to go away, anyways.
Yeah.
So I had that unique position where I knew what was coming 3 or 4 months ahead of time, so I could push.
Now, you're married and you mentioned that you believe you had children,
Four.
four of them, so you're busy. When you're switching, in one of the pressures a lot, and I've heard this many times over the years, and I experienced it myself, but back when my kids were young, and I made the switch from corporate life to entrepreneurial life. The concern oftentimes is time, especially especially if you're not going to cut the cord and you're going to do both at the same time. Now it becomes a time issue, and right, because now you're building another
Yeah.
business, but you're working 9 to 5. Oh, wait a minute, I still married. The kids are young, so I got got to. How did you manage that time? Because that is and that right there is the reason why a lot of people never even try, because they don't even believe they can do it.
I don't think I did manage it well, to be honest. The
That's
turning
fair.
point for me, the point of realization for me was I left for a 4 day conference, and my wife texted me and said, "Oh, hey, Ezra, my oldest son. Ezra just asked me where you were. He didn't realize I was gone for a day and a half because I worked in the basement in my office for like 14 plus hours per day, just sequestered in my office." And I said, "That is a mark of shame against me as a father.
Mm,
It should never be that way." But it was for a while. So part of fixing that was because things got really tight for a while too,
sure.
for quite a while. But a part of fixing that was I told my wife, I said, treat me like I'm working at an office. Expect to see me at dinner time. Expect to see me on the weekends. I will do a very good job of turning things off at or before 7 p.m., which is kind of late, but that's what I felt like I needed. And I will do a very good job of being off work on the weekends. I'm yours in the evenings and on the weekends, but during the business day, from the morning until evening time, treat it like I'm out of the house. That was, I needed to
Yeah.
preserve the work time, and I needed to make sure I dedicated
Yeah.
time with the family.
Being present. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's real, and it's a challenging transition, no doubt. I remember when my kids were young, there was 2 years I did IT consulting, and it was a lot of fun. But we quickly figured out, relatively quickly, I guess, that as I because I was good at it, they would send me on these multi-day trips more and more.
Mhm.
And we realized the kids are young, you can't be gone that long. So he said, yeah, we got to go back to corporate. So I said, if I ever do IT again, that would be what I would do, though, because it was fun. So,
One other thing we did was I bought a 20-year-old RV for cash in a separate business, a separate LLC, so it's all business expenses. And when I have a conference, we take a trip about half the time. Now, if it's a quick conference, I'm in and out and I'm on with life. But when we have an opportunity to go from Kansas City to California, great. We turn it into a 17-day business trip. Stayed with
mm,
family, visited national parks, got out to my destination, had my 3 day conference. They're kind of without me for 3 days while I'm networking and doing stuff. And then We've got the rest of the time to come home. And I'm turning business travel into family time.
Beautiful. And it's never been easier with the technology we have today,
Yeah.
right?
And Starlink and things like that. Yeah, if I had to work, I could work. I could even attach, it's a motorhome, so it's like motorized and you can be in the vehicle at the same time. You can even attach another tow behind camper to it and make that your office.
Oh, there you go. We're going to drag the office along. Kids, we're taking over the main deal here. I love it. I love it. So, what's a lesson? What would you say is the biggest lesson you learned from your cybersecurity days that helps guide your decision making today?
It's the concept of making informed decisions. And I think it also harkens to military leadership training where they say you've got to make the best decision available or best decision now with the information that's available to you right now. You're never going to get enough information to make a perfect decision. And so the same thing is true with risk. You've got to make risk decisions and operational decisions. And sometimes they're going to be wrong, but you make the best decision with the information available. As long as you're doing your due diligence, you got to move forward. You can't just get stuck and wait and do nothing while you wait for the perfect information.
So, were you former military by chance?
No, tried, but I got rejected because I got dry skin.
No.
That's enough, apparently.
Interesting. Well,
Yep.
I asked because you mentioned military, and yes, and I've heard what you shared, and that's a powerful thing. But as an information person, as a data guy, and by the way, I'm also a data guy, so I can relate. It's so easy, and I love how you said it. You can never get enough information. But in the moment, it's really easy to forget that. Well, let me find it. Be right, because we're data people. We'll like, well, let's find that. Okay, now let's branch. Oh, let's play that. And next thing you know, you've played out 100 more scenarios than you actually needed to. How do you guard against analysis paralysis for our left brain listeners?
You need somebody who can check you on it. I don't need to be checked on it that much. I like information, but I've got a bias toward action, and it's almost like I look at myself in the mirror while I'm talking too many questions, and I'm like, "Hold on, Caleb, when is good enough? Make the decision. You got to decide."
So you've got the bias toward action. What's your message to the one that has a bias toward information consumption without even real? To some of it, well, what people will do is they will take in more and more information when watching this happen on the other side, it eventually becomes an excuse for not facing what needs to be faced.
I agree. I think there needs to be a little bit of confrontation about, hey, you chicken, get to action. But also, one of the most motivating things for me was I saw an Instagram post that said someone dumber than you and with lower morals is succeeding because they're taking action and you're not. It could
Truth.
be you, it should be you, but it's not because you're stuck in analysis paralysis. You're not taking action. Take action. That was motivating for me. Print that and put it on your wall or something. Someone stupider than you is more successful than you because they bias toward action and you don't. I'm
Yeah.
the better choice for the world than that person, but I'm not taking action, so shame on me.
And there is no shortage of people that will tell you they're not very smart, but you look at them and you're like, wait a minute, they know something I don't know. When in reality, they just took action. That
And
is the
that's the
truth.
smart thing. It's like, who's really the dumb one?
Yes, yes, yes,
You
yes.
know, you can look at it 20 different
Yeah,
ways, but it's my duty to take action at this point because, well, having employees helps push that narrative too.
absolutely. What's your secret for pushing? Because you're pushing into these industries where you've started multiple companies now, and you just mentioned you're starting the title company. These are industries that, they're very competitive. Some would even argue they're crowded. I don't know if I would say that, but maybe depend. Maybe in some markets more so than others. In the larger markets, you've got a passion for doing this because you're still growing. You're far from done. But when you're going into these, like, how are you handling this idea of I'm gonna go start a title company? Where's a bazillion title companies? Whatever, who cares? But you're diving into very competitive waters, and now people got to be like, well, why Caleb versus ABC Title? It's been around for 20 years or 20 or whatever, right? How do you handle this competitive aspect of business?
I would almost bounce that back. How do you prove how effective a security program is? By a tax that you don't get that you can't measure? Like that. Like, so to me, a competitive industry or a crowded industry, when I see a crowded industry, it's crowded with average, it's crowded with mediocre. And if my commitment is excellence, it's not crowded. That's my take.
Mm.
So I'm not scared of that. In fact, a crowded market is a safer market for me because I'm going to bring in excellence and we're going to get a reputation and the word of mouth referrals. And that's what's going to make the difference for us.
That's a good word. It is a crowd. It is. There is a lot of average, and we
And I'm
all.
not average. So
And it's
there's not a lot
well,
of
it's
competition.
interesting as I'm thinking about your perspective. I love that because I'm sitting there thinking, who are the people we remember? We remember the people that are not average.
They're either great or they're terrible. Both have a place in your mind forever.
That is the truth.
I'm going to be fantastic or I'm going to go down in flames. Either
Right.
way, you'll know
And
me.
and the reality is, if you're not great, you're actually better off being terrible than average because at least you're memorable and you can bounce back.
No such thing as bad press. There you go.
So well, I've personally lived it, so I know it works. So, but you think about different businesses, and take away real estate from it. We've seen that where here's a business, here's a name brand that just did something stupid. Doesn't matter who it is or where. Their name went to the toilet, but then they recovered. We still remember them, but we
They have a,
never we
I can
never
tell you,
remember those companies in the middle. We never remember. We don't even know who they are.
that's right. And the ones that go in the trash and come back, they have a bias toward action. They fail and they get back up and they keep going.
That's a good word. That's a good word. Kind of reminds me of the old adage, the best decision is the best decision. The second best decision is the wrong decision. And then if I want to get spiritual, I think of the Bible where Jesus said he's going to spit out the lukewarm church. It's the worst place to be is lukewarm, average.
Yep.
It's a great word, great word.
I like
Every
clarity.
entrepreneur, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I like clarity rather than the gray area. What are we actually doing? Who knows?
Yeah, clarity does wonders of great things for all of us. Every entrepreneur faces setbacks. What's the biggest mistake you've made in your entrepreneurial journey that's propelled you forward the most?
I don't know that it's propelled me forward the most, but it sure taught me a lot. I overhired and classic blunder. Now I know, but I overhired ahead of sales volume because I have a long training cycle, and I staffed up to double the size that I am now. And then the market shifted before spring got there, and then spring got there because I hired in October, November. Spring shows up, my people are trained, and business isn't coming in. It's supposed to be coming in, and it just never comes around. And that was, I estimated that to be $140,000 mistake because I paid people for months. We spent time and money recruiting and training people, and then we carried them for a while we were waiting for business to come in and pushed marketing and sales. It just didn't happen. The market flooded with competitors. That was the year that my competitors flooded the market because I was it was blue ocean when I started instead of red ocean. Red ocean is there's blood in the water and lots of sharks and everybody's a feeding frenzy, so lots of businesses competing for the same customers. And that's what happened during my hiring and training time frame. And I had to do layoffs, and that was the worst experience of my life. And we're a remote company, but I got everybody into a room, and as the entrepreneur, business owner, leader, I said, I have failed you. I made a mistake. I don't have an explanation or an excuse for it. Here's what happened. It's my fault for not knowing any better. And I'm sorry, I've got to lay some people off. And I had a meeting with every one of those people because I wanted to feel that pain all the way down
Mm,
to my core. And I wanted to remember that so that I never let it happen again. And I
mm,
borrowed money to pay them 2 weeks of just, hey, here's 2 weeks pay. I've got to lay you off. I'm so sorry. I don't have anything better or any other option. I borrowed this money, by the way. So I'm doing everything I possibly can for you, but I've already screwed up beyond recovery. That was the worst entrepreneurial experience I've ever had.
But that's a very humble, respectful position to take. Just, I mean, obviously no one wants to hear that, but by the same time, the way you just convey that, I'm like, it's honest, it's respectful.
Learned a lot,
Um,
felt it deeply, never want it to happen again.
yeah.
Yeah.
But no, yeah. And I've had to lay people off in the past. So it's never fun.
Yeah.
It's never fun. It's never fun. But, so it taught you a lot, though.
Yes. And I think my biggest lesson is about partners. I really don't want to partner with somebody who hasn't had their own harrowing experience where they've come through it. Not just they had a bad experience and they were able to get away from it, escape safely or escape with minimal losses. I'm not looking for an escape artist. I'm looking for somebody who's committed to the future, committed to coming through, and committed to their people. And so I need that story, one of those stories in your past, if I'm going to partner with you long term on a deal, on a
I think I'm
business.
gonna. I think I'm gonna call. I'm always looking for what am I gonna call this episode, and I think I might call it that. I'm not looking for an escape artist.
There you go.
So let's talk about partnerships for a moment because partnering is a double-edged sword. Like the right partnership is a wonderful experience, and the wrong one can be an epic nightmare. Unfortunately, too many real estate investors are in the latter because they get into it with rosy ideas, rosy ambitions. It's all the wonderful things about it, which is fine, nothing wrong with that, but they never really assess risk. And not only do they not really assess risk, they certainly don't discuss risk with each other. And I always tell people if you're going to do a partnership, your number one client, your number one focus is not the deal, it's each other. Because if you don't get that right, the deal is the
That's right.
deal is just collateral damage at that point.
Yep.
So how did you, and by the way, I agree with you. If when I partner with people, it's either a teaching students relationship because they don't have the experience, or yes, they better have the experience. Because if they don't, you're just the teacher at that point. So let's just call it what it is. How did you come to this conclusion in your journey of if I'm going to partner with someone, I want to know they've been to hell and back and they lived to tell about it and they grew from it. They got better.
How do you assess it?
Well, just your thoughts. How do you set? How do we figure that out? Like, what is it that even led you to take that position?
I mean, having been through it myself and thinking like I'm worthy to be a partner now. Like it just dawned on me from the perspective of if I was an outsider, as I told that story to some people, I was like, you know what, that actually qualifies me to be a better partner than I was before, because
100%.
how much character you haven't seen somebody's character until they've been through something bad, and I've shown my character and I'm proud of it. Even I made a mistake, but I'm proud of what I did through it.
So how do people like just one quick question because this is the question everyone's always asking. How do I determine what someone's threshold for dealing with challenges is?
Good luck. I don't know. Personal references, personal stories, but spending time with somebody and talking through some of the tough things. At one point, I built, and if you follow up with me, I'll send it to you. I built a partner evaluator or a partnership evaluator where it's like, do you even know the credit score of your partners? Because that's a pretty good indicator of their committedness to follow through on their obligations, by the way. But
Interesting.
you should know if you're going to do a deal, even if it's a single real estate deal, you should know a lot about that person if you're partnering. What is their credit score? What is their history with A, B, and C? And get some answers on some important questions. And so I did write a partnership evaluator document that you can interview each other. I can send a copy to you. You can send a copy to me. We fill it out and send it back to each other as part of, are we going to do this deal together or not? If you want to make
Very
that available, I'll make it freely available for the show.
wonderful. No, I'll take you up on that. That would be great. That would be great. Let me ask you one more question. You've been in real estate now for a few years. You're building companies. You're not just doing deals, you're going into the different areas of it to have multiple businesses. Where do you see yourself 5 years, 10 years from now, and how did you develop that vision?
In my head, I'm already there as an entrepreneur visionary. I already have a little empire of companies that are related. I've captured a whole vertical. So we've got the transaction consulting and coordination. We have a title company. We have a training company. So my brand is Creative TC. TC can stand for a lot of things. So title company, transaction consulting, training company, transaction capital. So I'll be doing closing deals, lending on deals, all these different aspects of mostly investment related um, real estate,
I
a
love it.
family of companies.
You have the vision in place,
Yeah.
and that's the key. It starts with vision. I love it. Love it. Well, Caleb, this has been very informative. I appreciate it. I love the insights you've shared today. This has been excellent. So I appreciate it. And to our listeners, if you want to connect with Caleb, we'll have links on how to connect with him below. We'll put the link to the partnership thing that he mentioned. We'll put that out there as well. And if you want to do business with Caleb, he's doing deals. So, maybe if you have a deal, reach out to him if you're in the real estate space, and maybe he can help with that. So, Caleb, I want to thank you again for coming on today. Super insightful. Can you leave us with a final word?
Hmm. I'd say pray more. I don't pray enough over my decisions, and I should. I get that you got to make a decision. This is a note to self as much as anybody else. Pray about decisions.
Power of prayer. It works. I love it. That's a good word. I love it. All right, Caleb. Well, thank you again for being on, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.